I'm on a boat that's up in a yard, so hopefully there was already quite a lot of noise outside, but hopefully not too bad.
Sounds good right now.
To vote in favor, like, you can ring the ship's bell. That is perfectly acceptable.
Some people get sent to the doghouse and some others get sent to the boat.
The boat that wouldn't float.
I just got off a floating boat. That's why the wind swept look. Yeah. What's left, Bob? What's left?
I say you have nothing to sweep.
I swept it right off. Yeah.
I must say, when we all end up meeting in the same room, I'm gonna miss seeing everybody's backgrounds.
Who changes the most? I feel like that might be Tom.
I think so. Okay, it's 4:30. I'm calling the meeting to order. I'd like to acknowledge that the District of Tofino operates within the territory of the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation, Tla-o-qui-aht Hahufli. And we have a recommendation. I move that the rules set out in Section 15 of the District of Tofino Meeting Procedure Bylaw number 1229, 2016 be temporarily suspended to allow for all council members to participate electronically in the regular council meeting of October 26, 2021. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Chalmers, all in favor? Motion is carried.
Through the mayor, there was a second part to that recommendation. Is
sorry.
it friendly to council that it's the recommendation as set out on the
Oh,
agenda?
yeah. Okay, well, we'll do that too. Then I'll continue on that motion, and that that October 26, 2021 regular council meeting be held electronically via Zoom and live broadcasted on the District of Tofino's YouTube channel. Seconded by Councillor Chalmers. All in favor? That motion is carried, and we will announce that this meeting is being video recorded and will be broadcast on the District of Tofino's YouTube channel. We adoption of agenda. I move that the October 26, 2021 regular council agenda be adopted as amended to move 3.3 to correspondence. I have a seconder. Seconded by Councillor McMaster. All in favor? Motion is carried. Then if there is no objection to adopting the consent agenda, I will move adoption. Seeing none, agenda is adopted, consent agenda. And public comment on agenda items. Do we have any public comment? Ms. Best.
Thank you, Mayor Law. We do have 2 members of the public present, so I'm just going to remind those members of the public, if you would have a comment on any agenda items and the item numbers, you can use the Q&A function in our meeting here, just at the bottom of the Zoom window. So I'm going to call once, and if you have a question, submit it, and I'll call twice. And if there's no submissions, I'll call thrice and we can move on. And just a reminder that we do have another section at the end of the agenda for questions to council that you can use as well.
Okay. Seeing none, we are moving on to the mayor's report. Councillor Steer and I met with the Tofino General Hospital Foundation to discuss our meeting with council's meeting with Minister Dix and the Ministry of Health. And we also had a very profitable discussion about next steps for Tofino General Hospital and the foundation. And that was generously hosted by Long Beach Lodge. So thank you very much. There's been several meetings with council staff and many fixed roof accommodation providers, and that was to gain support for council's wish to use a portion of the MRDT to help service the wastewater treatment plant debt. And that is ongoing, and those have been very great meetings to be at, and I thank everyone for participating. Councillor Thick and I met with Assistant Deputy Minister Taryn Walsh to, let's see here, what is her actual title? Assistant Deputy Minister Taryn Walsh, she is the Assistant Deputy Minister of Community Safety, Crime Prevention, and we discussed gender-based violence and sexualized violence. And that also was an excellent meeting to find out what the ministry is doing in that regard, and lots going on there. Moving on. Yesterday, October 25th, marked the 6th anniversary of the capsizing of the Leviathan II and the loss of 6 lives. And our thoughts remain with the victims, survivors, family, and friends, first responders, community members, and all who were forever changed by this tragedy. I'd like to read out the names of the victims. We have Nigel Hooker, Ravichan, Morgan Pillay, Jack Slater, Katie Taylor, Jack Slater, David, and Stephen Thomas. And I'd just like to share a little bit about David and Stephen. David was 50, Stephen was his son. Stephen was 18. Stephen had Down syndrome. David and Stephen loved each other dearly. They were dedicated to each other, and they traveled extensively, sharing many adventures. And Stephen was a budding photographer. And the last sighting of Stephen and David alive, David was holding Stephen out of the water. And so I just like to give them tribute for exemplifying the greatest of human attributes, love, dedication, and self-sacrifice. And with that, I would like to pause for a moment for a minute of silence. I would like to say that I'm proud to be part of this community. The response to the Leviathan 2 tragedy was exemplary. We have no delegations. We're moving on to correspondence. And I believe we'll put item 3.3, Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities, AVICC. We'll put that at 8.5, if that's okay with you, Councillor McMaster. 8.1, we have a letter from the Honourable Jennifer Whiteside, Minister of Education, regarding safe schools. And this was in response to Council and staff's UBCM ministerial meeting with Jennifer Whiteside and her ministry. And we're glad to see some movement in that direction, and we look forward to hearing more. 8.2, Mark Lofthouse, Chief Negotiator, Ministry of Indigenous Affairs, regarding Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation and British Columbia Pathway Agreement, which I believe was signed on October 14th. Comments from Council on this one? Councillor Thick.
Thank you. I had a couple of questions. I just wanted to better understand the process here. So the letter is, first of all, it is addressed to Acting Mayor Councillor Anderson. I just wondered, first off, why that was the case, and just a question about the date of this. It came in mid-October, which would have been after our last council meeting. But can we just talk about that for a minute, the dates and the person to whom it was addressed?
Sure. I'm not sure we have answers. Is there an answer? I did note that Mr. McPherson, you have a comment on that? I do.
I didn't write the letter, obviously, so don't know why it was addressed to that, but I could maybe speculate that at a time when we may have had conversations beginning with on a matter like this, that Councillor Anderson was acting mayor back earlier in the year, but I don't know. I'm not sure I understand the date question. The letter came in after the last council meeting, so that's why it's on this council agenda. The last council meeting was October 12th. Today's October 26th, so it's come in during the correspondence period for this council meeting.
Yeah, I was just curious why there was some kind of a question at the end, or a statement which said that there was some, if you had feedback or comments, but I mean, I suppose that feedback and comments on this agreement can't be now undertaken because it's after the date of signing. That's why I asked about the date, and yeah, why we were asked to comment when it was after
Oh, I understand.
when it was signed.
Yeah, that I think coming out of this letter, I mean, I just first want to say that I'm pleased that the Ministry of Indigenous Affairs and the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation have signed this agreement. I do think that, you know, some of the issues you brought up, Councillor Thick, point to a need to address communication going forward. I think there was some communication mistakes in this letter. Councillor Anderson, didn't see your hand.
Yeah, I have no idea why it was addressed to myself either. I was assuming that perhaps the mayor was out of town at the time it was addressed. So other than that, I don't know. Just thought I would, in case anybody was wondering if I knew why, I don't know why.
Yeah. I think that's definitely, there's definitely some communications. I understand that the district was supposed to be informed of the signing and a delegation sent, but that didn't seem to happen either. So I think going forward, what we can do is we can reach out to the Ministry of Indigenous Affairs, let them know some appropriate communication avenues for next time.
Mm-hmm.
Councillor Thick?
Yeah, and on that note, I just think that, I think we're all wanting to move forward in this direction. I just find it a bit surprising, to be honest, that, that the mayor and or council was not present at the signing or even party to any discussions. I mean, we had one meeting, and when I asked questions, I didn't really get any response that I was looking for. So I'm just saying that I would like to write back to, I think is it Mr. Morehouse? And just ask if the council of the District of Tofino could be included in the discussions, so that we might better understand the implications to the District of Tofino and especially to the District of Tofino taxpayers. Because as we're about to discuss, there's different agreements that are, coming down, and we're looking at fire and sewer and potentially water going forward. And it involves a lot of things that involve both of our municipalities, of our First Nation. It involves both of us. And in the spirit of collaboration, which is what is said in the community charter, I think that it would be in the province's best interest to just to include us in these conversations, because when we're excluded, I'm not sure that I feel the same kind of collaboration that might make everything go smoother. So while I applaud this idea and the agreement, I do think that it is very important that the district be involved in the discussions, and I would like to see a letter go back to the writer and just to say that we would like to be included in these discussions. So that's my main point. Thank you.
I mean, technically, I guess this letter was written to me. I could always respond personally, just to clarify some of the communication issues, and then to address perhaps a request for another meeting with council to discuss timelines and ways forward. Ms. Best.
Thank you, Mayor Law. Through the mayor, the letter also indicates a phone number. So because of the date and the expediency of this letter, and because things are moving fast, I might recommend Mayor Law call the number, because the number was provided, or a letter. So a letter may take a little more time, but the phone call may be more expedient for this process, just to make sure we get in there.
Yeah, I understand no, my understanding is that this agreement has already been signed. So it's a bit of a, as far as I understand, but tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to call tomorrow. I'll call and get a rundown and just clarify some things, and then we'll go from there. Does that suffice for you, Councillor Thick? For now, I mean, this is a long process, and we'll certainly be looking to be more involved.
Yes, I understand. And that was why I asked the question at the beginning when it was addressed to Councillor Anderson as acting mayor, who is the right person to respond? And I'm just saying as a councillor that I think, we've spoken to Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation, the mayor, chief and council many times, and I was surprised to learn that, it wasn't on previous agendas, and yet this letter has come to us today. So I just want to be clear and collaborative and better understanding of what what the agreement is about and what it means to the district, and how we can be involved and helpful.
Understood.
Thank you.
Any other comments on that letter before we move on? No. Okay, moving on to 8.3, Minister of Forest Lands, Natural Resources, Resource Operations and Rural Development regarding modernizing forest policy. Any comment on this one? No, I did participate in the first round of modernizing forest policy. It was very enlightening, very technical. I encourage anybody on council wanting to be involved to sign up. I believe it's early in the new year, if I'm not mistaken on this one. Moving on, we have 8.4, letter from the Honourable Mike Farnworth, Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General regarding alcohol sales, gender equity and crime prevention. I did mention in my mayor's report that Councillor Thick and I did meet with Assistant Deputy Taryn Walsh, and that was very profitable, and we should see some interesting things come out of this government towards improving or preventing gender-based violence. Anybody else have a comment on this letter? Councillor Steer, surprised to see your hand.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Law. Yeah, I just wanted to comment and suggest at the end of this maybe a letter of thanks to the minister for the response. And there were a few things in the letter that I found very positive, and there was the question of one of the asks that we had was, and that the minister is committed to exploring this further, was the technical working group on public health and safety. And I just want to further and follow up with that. And the deputy minister that's in charge is the other half of, there's Mary Sue Maloney, who's the general manager of the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch, and the deputy minister that was CC'd onto that letter. And just to further that conversation, and that if there was clarity needed on what that might look like, I think there's real opportunity here from a couple of different perspectives, and just to also acknowledge and thank the ministry for the extension, for example, on the moratorium on new licenses at retail stores, and that's going to be extended to 2032. Which shows that the government does understand some of the implications of the public policy measures that are put in place, and I would just like to further that conversation.
Excellent. What's the protocol for writing those letters of thanks, Ms. Best or Mr. McPherson?
Your worship, you can a letter written from the minister, such as this, if you want to write a letter of thanks with I think the 3 or 4 points that Councillor Steer raised. There isn't a need for a council resolution for something that's fairly pro forma like that. Okay, it's going to happen. Councillor Steer.
Yeah, and just to further that, I know we haven't received correspondence back from the Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions, which during our ministerial meetings, there was a real enthusiasm for this proposal, and that I don't know if it's best to wait for the ministry's response, but it indicated in the letter from Minister Farnsworth that they do work closely. It is in their mandate letter to work closely. And so I don't know, I'll maybe wait to see if that letter arrives. If not, then maybe then we can send out or CC at some point the letter of thanks and provide the information that Minister Malcolmson had requested, as well as Minister Dix in our conversations with the Ministry of Health, who does work collaboratively again. And it had expressed enthusiasm for the technical working group that was proposed. So we'll wait for those, and then if we do, then that should be easy, and if we don't, then we can chart a course from there.
Excellent, and I just have to say a general thanks to all the ministries that responded and that we met with. I found them very profitable. Very enlightening, and I was pleased to see that our requests and meetings have some movement. We have item 8.5, which is formally 3.3, Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities, AVICC, regarding the 2022 AGM, and this was requested to be moved by Councillor McMaster. Would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, I have no problem receiving this. It's just that the deadline for resolutions is January the 28th of next year. We're almost at the end of October, so it's going to creep up rapidly. I suspect we may want to make a resolution this year about MRDT. I know I would be interested in that, so I want to make sure that staff and council work together to submit any resolutions on time.
Councillor Steer, and then Councillor Chalmers.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that forward, Councillor McMaster. I too would like to work. There was a resolution that was, our MLA had suggested surrounding the technical working group that we had brought forward to Minister Farnsworth, which might be, it was suggested that might be an appropriate resolution to bring forward through ABICC and subsequently to UBCM. So I would support your recommendation wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want some clarification for the MRDT conversation, because I do feel that what we're looking for within our community is very community specific, and that we're not looking to change MRDT in general, or am I missing something in there? Like, are we thinking the sewage treatment plant or some just in general?
In general, well, I'm particularly thinking about related to affordable housing. I would really like to know the portions of MRDT collected by various providers. I mean, we know Airbnb collects so much and that goes to affordable housing. We don't know how much all the other providers. It's all just thrown into one big pot. So from my point of view, I would like to know what the proportions are. I don't need to know the amounts.
Thank you. And maybe with that, looking at some of the other platforms like right now. You know what I'm trying to say.
VRBO.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
What I'd like to know.
Thank you for the clarification.
That's great. I think this should garner further discussion. I think there's some UBCM agenda or UBCM resolutions concerning MRDT for other accommodation platforms online, but I'm not sure. So it rings a bell. So perhaps what is the normal avenue for discussing resolutions for AVICC, and do we need to do that in council or call a special meeting? How does that work? Mr. McPherson.
May I suggest that, so council now has this in front of them and knows the deadline for AVICC resolutions. Perhaps if a councillor is interested in advancing something with the support of all of council, they could work with staff to prepare a notice of motion for a meeting sometime between now and the deadline, and then we can use that as the vehicle to get it in front of council.
Okay, Councillor Steer, one more comment.
Yeah, they do lay out quite clearly the resolution process, and they did give it out fairly clearly in the correspondence to us. So within that context, we can use that as our template and then work with staff maybe on the exact maybe proper wording to bring that forward. But it is fairly well laid out in the package that we have.
Yeah, I was just thinking for council discussion, but that's good. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, just to be clear, for further discussion, which I think is sort of going on a little bit. So we'll carry on with that, and perhaps Councillor Thick.
Yeah, I think this is a good idea. And if we were able to put this on the agenda for next time or the time after, and prior to that meeting, we could perhaps come prepared to speak to those ideas and maybe then begin to move things forward. I would be interested, for one, to work on the MRDT resolution if that were to be agreed upon by council. Thank you.
That sorry, there's a couple things going on here. One is we've got the suggestion that interested councillors work on these resolutions with staff and then come back. And I just want to be clear, Councillor Thick, that you would like to put these on the agenda and work on them as a whole now? Is it? Just trying to get where you're going here.
I was just trying to, yeah, I thought if there were ideas amongst us that needed to be generated, we create a list and put it on the agenda. And then perhaps we discuss whether that's worthy, and then one or two of us need to go back and work on that and then come back perhaps to the next meeting. I don't know what the real process is, but that's just my thinking out loud. Just to move, as Councillor McMaster said, just to move it along and to potentially get, you know, one or two or three resolutions that that not only are important for us, but maybe important for other coastal communities. So just trying to think ahead.
Is it, are you particularly interested in the MRDT, the possibility of an MRDT resolution, Councillor Thick?
Yes, I would be. And maybe there's others, as Councillor Steer said. So I was just saying, could we create a place on the agenda next time for that discussion to take place?
Councillor Chalmers, go ahead.
May I think I understand what Councillor Thick is saying, but I worry that we might get bogged down by putting it on another agenda item. But maybe if Councillor Thick is interested in championing the motion, I mean the resolution, I'd be happy to work with you, and then we can work with staff. And then when we have something, bring it to council and see if there's any additions, or otherwise, I think we have a lot of cooks in the kitchen working on it. And if anybody has any feedback in the meantime, they could send us some notes. That would just be my suggestion, to keep it a bit streamlined.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's the way to go right now. I think if you're interested in a resolution, perhaps working with staff and the other council members, and then bring it back. I think that's what I'm hearing from council as a general, and I think that's what happens normally, is it not? I think so. Well, I think we're gonna go that route. I'm looking around the room, and it looks like council's nodding. So please do that. I look forward to seeing how those work out. Councillor McMaster, is that good for 3.3, aka 8.5?
Yeah, that's fine with me. I just wanted to make sure we were on it.
Excellent, thank you. Moving along, presentations and reports. We have 9.1, we have a fire protection service agreement, and we have a report from Protective Services. Chief Baker.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Hope everyone's doing well tonight. I don't have a formal presentation for this report. I think hopefully everyone's had the chance to take a look through it. Just to provide a little bit of background, perhaps this may be somewhat new to a few of you, but back in July of 2019, we signed the first fire service protection agreement with Tla-o-qui-aht and Essa-Wista reserve lands. The initial agreement was for a 3-year contract with, I believe it was 3 additional 1-year terms after that. We are about to reach the end of the first 3-year segment, and instead of looking at one of the 1-year renewal options, I've decided to approach this with a new 3-year agreement with the understanding of just how busy everybody has been, and not wanting to run the risk of 1-year contract lapsing just due to everybody being so busy with everything that's going on currently. And so this is what we've got before you right now, is that draft of the new 3-year service agreement. It has been in the hands of the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation for a couple of weeks now. I did receive word from their public works manager, who I worked with last time around on this. He has indicated that he has no concern, no need for any changes at this time. And if council is prepared to endorse this, then they will be ready to get together and get some signatures out. So if there's any questions, I'm more than happy to do my best to try and answer those.
Thank you, Chief Baker. It looks like we have a question from Councillor Steer. And then Councillor Thick.
Yes, thank you, Chief Baker. Just a quick question around the length of the contract. I know it, and I was just reading over in the background that the initial 3-year, then there was a provision for 5 1-year extensions onto that. And then I was just curious if there was conversations with TFN around a longer term solution for their fire protection services. I know that it is incredibly expensive, and this is a great service that we can co-work together. Is it? And I'm just thinking of your staff and their staff's time. Would there be an appropriateness to a 5-year as opposed to a 3-year extension? And it's just a question of just to make it
it's an excellent
3 years down the road.
It's an excellent question. I'm going to approach this one optimistically. So the initial desire was to have a 3-year contract in place, and over the course of this period, start looking at opportunities where we can create and provide a training program for the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nations to have a standalone fire department. That still is very much in the interest as expressed by the members of TFN. However, with what's been going on, it has not been possible to coordinate that. Community lockdowns and those sorts of things, and this being an extremely busy year for ourselves, safety-wise and time-wise, there just has not been opportunity to move forward in that direction yet. We did have the purchase of the fire truck that went towards TFN a couple of years ago. So that was a very first step. We've talked about moving forward. We just have not had that opportunity to kickstart that yet. But that is the ultimate goal that I think is best case scenario for both parties. Even after that point, we would continue to support a TFN department in the way that we do with UCLUIT, with mutual aid agreements and those sorts of things. But that would be the direction that we hope to move as early as feasible.
Excellent. Councillor Thick, you did have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I had a question or two about just the budget, and then a question about capacity. So can you remind me, Chief Baker, what the budget is for the fire department on a yearly basis, for example, 2021?
I don't have that number directly in front of me.
Or just an approximate figure?
I would hesitate to even take a guess at it right now, just an approximate figure, probably 250,000 range, I believe. But again, it's just off the top of my head. I don't have that close to me, and would probably take me a few minutes to pull that up.
Yeah, thank you. That was also what was in my mind. So around that figure. So I'm just asking the question, when you came up with the figure of $217 per house, I just wondered how it was calculated and how it relates to perhaps the cost for the Tofino taxpayer, if you might be able to explain that a bit.
Sure. The model that we worked with when we first came up with this is we looked at the Tofino Fire Department budget as a whole, and then the number of tax folios that there were. Then we separated out the percentage of those folios that were residential tax folios. So we divided the Tofino Fire Department budget by the number of residential tax folios, which gave us a per household amount. And then we applied that same formula to the number of houses or serviced units in Tla-o-qui-aht Essaouista. And that's what came up with our number. So we do have a list of all the housing for TFN, including both Tyastanis and Essaouista. And that number of serviced units, that's the only number that's being reviewed right now with TFN. They just wanted to make sure we have the current numbers. The last one was based on 209 housing units. I don't believe that that's gone up, but that's the number that we're looking at figuring out right now.
Thanks for explaining that. And I was just interested in that one aspect in your report where you make a mention. I can't quote what you said, but it has to do with building capacity within the TFN. And I just wondered if, how we've actually gone about doing that. Have we actually been able to invite 2 or 3 members of the community to join our training, like actually send out an invitation or create a space within that we hold a number of spaces, say vacant, so that they could be part of the group and receive the training? I'm just trying to think practically of how we get more capacity from TFN, and that they can become part of what we're doing too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. And first and foremost, I think, is maintaining an excellent relationship with those that are involved in trying to set up the fire department from that end. So I've worked a fair amount with Sean Quick and Bruce Frank to keep the lines of communication open and have that ongoing conversation about when is the right timing. And then we look at what's going to be the most appropriate training model. And so I don't think it's in the best interest of that community to have a couple of members come and just join in. I think what we really need to do, first of all, we don't have additional equipment that we could provide for those uses. So it's a matter of identifying how many individuals are keen and committed to receive the training, figuring out for them a budget for the equipment that they would need so that they can be protected under the same guidelines that we would be protected, and then picking an additional date. And it's not going to be possible to do on the same Tuesday night because we're already managing far too much for one night as it is. So it would have to be an additional date, and we'd have to figure out how to make that work so that we can have leaders go out and provide quality training in the community where they would be functioning as it makes the most sense. So there's definitely a few steps in the process, and that's what we've been talking about there. So.
Thank you. I just see that as a very important a link to foster is that that training, that camaraderie, and and building capacity within the TFN so that at some point in the near future they could perhaps take that on themselves. So I was particularly interested in what you had to say, and I hope that we can continue to look at that going forward. So
absolutely,
thank you.
It is definitely a high priority at the earliest possible opportunity.
Thank you.
Sure.
Councillor Steer.
Yeah, if there's no other questions, I can read the recommendation. That Council endorses the Fire Protection Services Agreement between the District of Tofino and the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation substantially in the form attached as Appendix 1 to the staff report, Fire Protection Service Agreement dated 26/10/2021.
Seconded by Councillor Anderson. Any further comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Excellent work, Chief Baker. And I do want to acknowledge the tremendous workload that I know that that the fire department you are under. So it's not going unnoticed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
9.2, Deputy Corporate Officer Appointment, Tla-o-qui-aht. And there's just going to be a short verbal report from Ms. Best.
Thank you, Mayor Law. Just to give some clarification as to why we're also appointing Ms. Tla-o-qui-aht as Deputy Corporate Officer. The Community Charter and the Evidence Act denote that once you appoint a Deputy Corporate Officer or Corporate Officer, they are considered Commissioner for signing affidavits for the province of BC. And I am going to be leaving the office on a vacation, so time, and I would like to make sure we have signing authority available for witnessing documents, signatures, and things. So it's just making sure we have that that signing authority in our office, and nothing is amiss while I am away. So that is what this is for, and we can unappoint Ms. Tla-o-qui-aht if we like later on. However, I do recommend that having an additional signing authority in the office is always a great asset to our team.
Feels like people going away on vacation is something we haven't had to deal with for a year and a half. Anyway, without further ado, can somebody read the recommendation? Councillor Thick, please go ahead.
Move the recommendation that Tla-o-qui-aht be appointed as Deputy Corporate Officer for the District of Tofino to act in the stead of the Corporate Officer with all the same powers, duties, and functions as established by Section 148 of the Community Charter for the duration of her employment contract with the District of Tofino.
Seconded by Councillor Chalmers. Any further comment? All in favor? And motion is carried. Business initiated by council members. I believe we have none, unless I'm mistaken. Moving on, no unfinished business. Question period. Ms. Best, do we have anybody signed up for question period?
Thank you, Mayor Law. There have been no submitted questions for the question period.
Okay, well then we will move into closed session. I recommend that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to sections 90, parentheses 1 of the community charter to discuss matters related to A, personal information about an individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent. C, employee relations. E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements. If the council considers that that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality. And K, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service that are at their preliminary stages, and that, in the view of the council, could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public. I have a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Chalmers. All in favor? Motion is carried. We're moving into closed session. I'll give you a minute here.
Thank you, Marlo.
Does anybody need a break? No. Okay, good. Moving along. Let us know when we can carry on, Ms. Best.
Just in about 30 seconds, I'm just locking the webinar and I'm stopping our broadcast.